what are you going to make of kind of this? Because you guys do this all the time on the site, right? You follow recruiting, you know the numbers, you know the names. At what point did you stop being disinterested in how many players are on Nebraska's roster?
Um, I don't know. I've never worried too much about if they add like 135 or 145. I've never been too caught up in that. The thing that's changed for me in the last year or two is the level of intrigue I have in the 85-man scholarship chart. I'll be honest, like the last year or so, I've kind of been like, I know there's NIL situations for certain guys. There's a way, for some walk-ons maybe to be honored in that way. And I've just stopped being just micro focused on that and like how do you get to that number. So that's probably the one thing that has changed in recent years. All the other stuff, I've never been a person who's like, oh, they got 147 over there, how do they make that work, sort of thing. I've just sort of said whatever size roster they want to have and they feel like they can be competitive with it and get good eyes on people, and if they have the space for it, I was always like, whatever, that was kind of my take with it.
So, what do you think, or who do you think was the catalyst to start talking about the discussion of roster limits? Is this just nudge, nudge, wink, wink happen to be about the same time as we look at conference and revenue sharing?
Yeah, well, yeah, I wonder if there's some connection to that. That could be possible. And then, of course, you got headlines out there that are like, okay, what's the future of the walk-on in college football? Now, that is a subject I care passionately about. I think most Nebraskans do, having seen the type of players that have come up that way. Even the guys who don't necessarily always, make it in the primary roles still have been pretty key behind the scenes, I think, about sort of affecting culture and all that. So like I was writing about like Derek Wacker from like UTAN,
Yeah.
this weekend, who won the Class C discus, and you hear his story, and he's a diehard Husker, going to every game or either watching it at his grandparents' house his whole life. It's guys like those that they're a big part of the pulse of Husker football. So I'll always get defensive about those guys and hope there's a good room for players like that. Maybe that is within reason of getting it down to 110 or 115 or whatever it may be in this new era of college football. But I just hope people outside of our bubble don't make silly changes that have consequences they're not thinking about with walk-on stuff and things of that nature.
BZ, don't you think, though, I mean, as long as there's been rules in college football, people have sort of found ways around them. Like, don't you think they'll just start finding loopholes? And I mean, I don't know. The first thing that came to my mind is like, oh, maybe they'll bring back JV teams and it doesn't count towards your roster number for the real team. You know what I mean?
I actually wouldn't mind that, but a lot of schools probably couldn't afford it.
Right, but a lot of schools can't afford the direction this thing's going anyway, right? And it wouldn't be a mandatory thing. I don't know. Like, don't you think they're going to find ways around the rules, whatever they are that are put in place?
I'm not of the thought there's going to be just like, hey, there's no more walk-ons. No, I don't think that's just going to happen. And yeah, I agree with you. There's always, it feels like, some way to, figure a way around whatever they've come up with. I don't even like that discussion's in the air though. But it's a subject that hits close to home with the walk-on players here, and then you see those type of guys, like Trent Euler, Rowdy Bauer, Derek Wacker. Those guys are that's Husker football and a big part of it to me. Those type of players, through the generations. So whatever it takes to keep that as a central part of things, that is something that I just hope happens. Always does.
Potentially the first domino hits with the Big 12 conference trying to get some tentative numbers in order for revenue sharing. Are you surprised it's moved this fast?
Not really. I feel like
Why did
there's
I just want to know why they didn't do this first?
Yeah, I don't know. Some of it's beyond my brain level. You probably know that, Damon. But I just think there's a lot of people like in there's some desperate programs out there looking at their money situation right now and some of the line items they have. I'm sure of that. Nebraska is in a better situation than most. Troy Dannon spoke on that last week. Everybody who's been in that chair has always said that, and I believe it. It's a program that's not in debt like some other places, and but you always have to be. You have to have somebody in that office now that is not just thinking about tomorrow and what tomorrow is going to bring, but what's like tomorrow 500 tomorrows from now bring, or more than that, because it's just so you got to be so forward thinking. And even when Troy Dan was talking about the stadium last week and the decisions you have to make there, you do have to weigh like, okay, where can we get monetary gain some revenue here from certain areas right now, because there could be that $20 million plus line item in the budget, and so you have to have people who are thinking about that. So I think there's people in other programs who they realize that's right on their doorstep right now, and there's certain acts they're going to have to take immediately to probably make it happen.
We're talking with Brian Kristofferson, Husker 24/7. BC, staying on the stadium for a second here. As we, you talked about kind of the financial viability of football programs being more and more of a factor in decision-making moving forward. And we saw that with the decisions on what to do with the stadium. Obviously, this is a temporary or a short-term fix that you're talking about. So if you are thinking about not just 1 or 2 years from now, but long-term financial viability for Nebraska football, like in your mind, what does that look like for the stadium? Is it trying to kind of build something, whether it's in the existing structure or somewhere else, to create additional revenue, or what does that look like in your brain?
It looks like not taking on more than you can chew. Like, I like that Dannon, he just needs some time with it. Like, he needs to know, for instance, with South Stadium, is that something that you could do in phases in any way, where you want to make improvements there over time. But is this the moment, for instance, where you want to have a hole in your stadium, and bring down your capacity to low 60,000s and all that, where you've had these loyal ticket holders and, 20, however many thousand are out of seats for a while you fix up an entire side of the stadium? And also just I like that he brings up like the competitive part of that, like it's a wind tunnel around that stadium, and then you got an end that's open, and it's you got to deal with that. There's all sorts of consequences to things like that, and I just like, it seems like he's being prudent right now about listening to people, not acting like what you don't know, just trying to listen to the people who have really been on this project for a while, get their best advice, and then go at it with a diligent pace. Like the whole South Stadium does not have to come down in January. It didn't have to, and this isn't the point probably where that's the proper thing to do. And I like that they're just taking a step back from that. I don't know, to your question, all the ways that you can monetize. I assume over time that, the alcohol sales thing is obviously one piece of the puzzle that's always been talked about. And I think that's coming sooner than later. I sort of think we're maybe like a year or two away from that being real. But other than that, you just got to constantly be brainstorming. Okay, how's a way we can gain a little here and still be fair to our fans in the process.
BC, so you're talking about being prudent, and I remember it was cool, right? Remember when we would ask, "Hey, did you get a survey? Did you get a survey? What'd you say on your survey? What'd you say?"
Mm-hmm.
So they tried to do their due diligence, and Trev did with trying to get a lay of the land. Do you feel as though that information, given what's come out since the change of plans, the rechanging of plans, the changing of an athletic director. Do you think that information would be similar if those things were filled out today? Could Dannon go back and look at this data and say, okay, I could see 2 years removed, or however, 2 or 3 years removed, how this data is still beneficial, knowing that people are more privy to hard numbers?
Yeah, there might be a thing or two that's changed. I do think the thing that would be constant on there is the amenities and just like the fan saying, okay, you're giving me a choice to say what's one or two things that could make my experience better. And certainly like concessions and some of the bathroom situations, that would be something a lot of people would still bring up. But I also think Nebraska fans, at the end of the day, they want to win more than anything. Like, and they're gonna. I do think there's a high percentage in this fan base that understand. Okay, if you give me a good reason why we're going to push back doing something right now, and it helps the athletic department financially, and it can put you guys in a better position to win. That's what I care about most. And I'm of the mind, if they got this thing humming and you're winning 9-10 games again, I don't think we talk about all those things quite as much. Like we use it. It ends up being filler because of the struggles that have happened. And it's like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if this were better while watching a crappy football game? Well, I think if people were watching really quality football and feeling good about the product, all that stuff sort of goes to the back seat. I'm not saying you forget about it. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. Of course it does. I'm just saying the biggest part of this all is winning. And I think fans are, whenever they fill out a survey or whenever they're thinking about it, that would always be the most important thing to them. If they're told this might take a couple years because we need this financially and this can help us, and it's that is presented in a way that is palatable and easy to understand, I think a lot of fans will usually get behind that stuff.
BC, aren't they also kind of making a bet that, like, hey, if they win 8 or 9 games over the next couple years, that fundraising is just going to be way easier for whatever they do decide to end up putting into place? Like, those phone calls get a lot easier when you're not coming off of a 7-year bowl drought, right?
I would think so.
A lot easier for Penn State to wrangle in $700 million, right?
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's
exactly.
They're kind of placing an enormous bet that over the next 2 years, Nebraska is going to win some games.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just I think it's the right move. I mean, you just have to put something before the people. If you're going to ask for money, at some point you have to show, like, this thing's heading in the right direction. This is a product you can be proud of and all that. So I think that's the smart way to do it. I like the fact that Dannon, he's not like in a hurry at this moment to go fundraise more for it before they actually put an actual plan or architectural designs in front of people. Like, this is what we're doing, and that just seems like good business to me. And especially after you've had donors who have gone beyond what would happen in most places to have that facility that just went up go up, with the fundraising they had there. So it would have been, I don't know, it was always a big ask to take on that next big project right after that project at a time where you haven't been to a bowl game since 2016. So I some of this to me is just common sense. It's like, you think you've got the right guy as a football coach. I think all of us on the show think that, actually. Yeah. Let's give it a few years, see if they can get that going, and you do some things that help amenities wise in the meantime, and then hopefully you can figure out how to take on some of those bigger projects in phases. That makes a lot of sense to me.
BC, let me ask you this only because I think you're extremely bright. Relative to like the off-season momentum, what's going on with the stadium, television contracts, you're talking about unionizing college athletics. How important do you think this season is in just year 2 to be successful?
I think it's a big deal in the sense that fans I think most fans I talk to really believe in how Rhule's building it.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
but they just like everything they hear about it, and it's more than just like that fake, that false hope or anything like that. It's like they see like how they practice, and it reminds them of another time, but also it's not all about the past. It's just like it's real to this coaching staff. Like, hey, we want to get all these guys on the field, getting them reps and all this stuff, and they hear that, and they hear how recruits speak about like this coaching staff and how genuine they are. And I think it all computes to them as this could be the real deal. We've seen this guy. He's built programs in the past before, and he's happened to do it in years 2 and 3, specifically where he's made big jumps. I just think we're at a point where it's been so long without that bowl game that people now, it's like, okay, give me that at least 7 or 8, right? Give me that win total that I can say, okay, my faith is right here. Because if let's be honest, if in early December we're talking about like a 5-7 season again, the whole tenor around Matt Rhule and everything is going to change. Like whatever gets said next off season, and even if it's the same stuff, and even if you still believe, yeah, they can build it, it's not going to strike quite the same way if they have the exact same record this year as they had last year. It just won't. Like that, you have to have that point where people say, okay, I see it in the win total too, and he's backing up exactly what I thought was going to happen. It's real. Let's go. And so I think that's why it's a big deal.
We're talking with Brian Kristofferson, Husker 24/7. BC, kind of along those lines, like it seems like, at least to me, and maybe this is just me personally, it seems like Nebraskans are more invested in the success or the potential success of Matt Rhule because of the way he's doing it. Like, I didn't take it personally when Scott Frost failed because I didn't believe in what was happening. I feel like I would take it really personally because I believe in the way he's doing things, I feel like I would take it really personally if Matt Rhule wasn't able to get it done for some reason. Does that make sense?
It does actually. I think he's done a better job. It's odd, in a way. Scott obviously is a native son. I'm not here to, pick at old scabs or anything. But after a couple of years there, it was beyond the winning. There was a little bit of a lack of connection, I felt, with even his own state and the fans here, with a few things. And I feel like Matt Rhule, being out in the public and just like feeling like I want to be here. My family wants to be here. My wife's opening up a business here, and we moved into Waverly, and his son's coming to school here. And it's just like people see all this and they're like, I like this guy. Like he's not here just at a stoplight to stop for a few seconds and move on. It feels real to them, that he's going to be around a while and wants to build it the right way. And I think they like the way that he embraces former players like nobody's business from what I've seen. He embraces Coach Osborne and Coach Solich, and Coach Solich, like he was huge in that. Like Trev did his part too. I want to give him credit, but he was a big deal, Coach Rhule, and in talking to Coach Solich, and I think making him comfortable even in coming back. So a lot of that stuff people see and they add it all up and they say, I like everything I hear. Now let's go win some games. And I think that this staff would say that's fair. Let's do that. That's the plan. And I like that they don't run from those expectations.
I go back to something he said a couple weekends ago, and he was dead serious. We were sitting at the table, and it was kind of, some serious conversations just about life and family and stuff. And he said, the one thing that he wishes people kind of understood is how much he actually loves it here. And like he hit the table, he said, I love it here. And he gave like 6 or 7 examples of why he does. And he says, nobody wants to talk about that though, because they're always trying to put limits and expectations on things. But what they don't factor in is how important it is to me. And I, given the context of the conversation, I don't think, I think I could probably tell if he was just saying that for effect. Like it was fairly passionate. And you know what? I I don't know anybody that really ever talks about it from that angle because we're never sure, right? Like we can't defend, like we can't say how much somebody loves something because you don't really know because it's
Yeah.
their feelings,
Yeah.
right? But to hear him say it as much as he did, I just get the sense I think we kind of undersell like how much he enjoys it.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean,
But you know, it's
people
hard for us. Like, who's going to come out and you're not going to have 500 words or like why Coach Rhule loves Nebraska, right? Like he'd have to he'd have to tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do think it was huge that I don't remember if it was a Monday or Tuesday where Rhule spoke for the first time at the mic after Trev Alberts had left. And you remember those days. There was some anger. There's a lot of like confusion about like what happened. And I think that was a really pivotal moment when we're this whole discussion we're having today. Like it felt like Nebraska needed someone to be a real leader in that moment, and nobody could do it more than the football coach. And he went up and he gave that like 10 and 11 minute talk before he even answered a question. And he sort of within there spoke on what you are talking about, Damon, and that like he spoke of his wife starting a business and all this stuff. Like I'm here. This is my place basically. And I think that meant a lot in that moment. And that goes back to the earlier questions we were talking about. I just think that's why people do feel kind of invested in him, and they like what he's about, the cut of his cloth, and feels like it's genuine. And now it's just like, I think there's that like, let's get this, because we feel like you got a guy that really cares, and we care, and let's make it happen together. And so that's why this season's so big.
Brian Kristofferson, Husker 24/7. Great stuff as always, BC. We'll talk to you again next week.